The fire lookout tower sits on a spur of granite that juts out from the spine of the Cascade Range like a broken finger. They call this station Point Silence. It isn't an official name you'll find on any Forest Service map, but everyone who has spent a season up here knows it. When the wind dies down and the thermal currents stop shifting through the pine needles, the quiet is so heavy it feels like pressure against your eardrums. It's a physical weight. I took the job because I wanted the quiet. I was tired of the city noise, the constant hum of traffic, the notifications, the voices. I thought I wanted to be alone. I thought isolation was a remedy. I was wrong. Isolation isn't a remedy. It's a magnifier. It amplifies everything. The sound of your own breathing, the creak of the timber beneath your boots, and the sounds that don't belong to you. I arrived in late June, just as the snow was melting off the north-facing slopes. The access road was a washboard of gravel and mud that chewed up the tires of my truck. I had to park 2 miles out and hike the rest of the way in. The pack was heavy, canned goods, propane canisters, water filters, logbooks, radios. The weight felt good on my shoulders. It grounded me. When I finally crested the ridge and saw the tower, it looked like a skeletal insect perched on the rock. 7 stories of steel and wood, anchored into the granite with bolts that had rusted into the color of dried blood. The cab on top was glass on all 4 sides, wrapped in a catwalk that squealed when the wind hit it just right. The first week was exactly what I had paid for. It was paradise. I spent my days scanning the horizon with my binoculars, watching the hawks circle the thermals, noting the gray smoke of distant lightning strikes. I spent my evenings cooking simple meals on the propane stove and writing in the logbook. The routine was sacred. Wake up at dawn, check the radios, sweep the glass, scan the sectors, log the weather. Eat, scan again, sunset, secure the tower, sleep. It was a rhythm that smoothed out the jagged edges of my mind. I felt clean. I felt useful. I felt like a guardian watching over a kingdom of trees that didn't know I was there. But the forest is never truly silent. You learn that quickly. There is the wind, of course. It moves through the Douglas firs like a slow ocean wave, a deep rushing sound that comes and goes. There are the birds, Stella's jays screaming like alarms, ravens croaking from the high branches. But there are other sounds, the settling of the mountain, the crack of a branch dropping from a dead snag, the scuttle of a squirrel on the roof. You learn to categorize them. You build a library of normalcy in your head. If a sound fits in the library, you ignore it. If it doesn't, you stop. You listen. You wait. The first thing that felt wrong wasn't a sound. It was a smell. I was up in the cab on a Tuesday, maybe 10 days into the season. The air was crisp, smelling of pine resin and dry dust. But then, a shift in the wind brought something else up from the valley below. It was faint, sweet, but cloying. Like meat left out in the sun too long, like old flowers rotting in a vase. I stood up from the chair and walked to the north window. I pressed my face against the cold glass. I scanned the tree line below. Nothing, just the endless green carpet of the canopy, broken by the gray trunks of the old growth. I told myself it was a dead deer. Maybe a bear kill dragging itself into a hollow log. That happens. Nature is messy. I logged it in my head and went back to my book. But the smell lingered for an hour, then vanished as quickly as it had come. 2 days later, I found the first sign on the catwalk. I had gone out to check the lightning rod grounding wire. The metal grate of the walkway was coated in a fine layer of pollen and dust. In the center of the walkway, on the south side, there was a footprint. It wasn't a boot print. It wasn't a bare paw. It was bare, but the shape was off. The heel was too narrow. The toes were too long, splayed out like fingers, and there was no dirt on it. The print was clean, as if the foot that made it was clean, but the pressure had disturbed the pollen. I crouched down. I put my hand near the print. The pollen was undisturbed around the edges. It looked fresh. I felt a cold prickle run up the back of my neck. I live 7 stories in the air. The only way up is a steep ladder that starts 10 feet off the ground. I checked that ladder every morning. It was secure. No one could climb that without me hearing the metal rung against metal. I wiped the print away with my boot. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a bird dropping that looked like a foot. Sleep deprivation. I was spending too much time staring at the horizon. But that night, I didn't sleep well. I lay on the cot in the lower cabin, listening to the wind. The tower sways. You get used to the motion, like being on a boat. But tonight, the sway felt different. It felt rhythmic, not random gusts. Push, pause, push, pause. Like something was leaning against the tower, testing the give of the steel. I lay there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling beams. I held my breath. I waited for the push. It came again. A slow, deliberate pressure on the south wall. Then, silence. I didn't get up. I didn't check. I just lay there until the sun turned the sky gray. The next morning, the radio static was worse than usual. The emergency frequency is supposed to be clear, just white noise until someone keys the mic. But now, there was a voice underneath the static. It wasn't words. It was breathing. Wet, heavy breathing that synced with the pulses of the static. I turned the squelch knob. The breathing got louder. I turned it off. The breathing stopped. Ah, 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 ah. I sat there for a long time, my hand hovering over the power switch. I decided not to report it. If I called it in, they'd send someone up to check the equipment. They'd see I was rattled. They'd pull me off the mountain. I needed this job. I needed the money. I needed the silence. I convinced myself it was interference from a distant storm front. Atmospheric ducting. I had read about it. But the feeling of being watched grew. It's a primal thing. You feel it on the back of your neck when you're washing dishes in a dark kitchen. Now, it was with me all day. When I scanned the western sector, I felt eyes on my back. When I ate my lunch, I felt like I was being observed from the tree line. I started keeping the binoculars on me, even when I went to the lower cabin to use the composting toilet. I moved differently. I stopped walking heavily. I started placing my feet carefully, testing the ground before putting my weight down. I was becoming part of the forest, but not in the way I wanted. I was becoming prey. On the 4th night of the strange occurrences, I saw the first one. It was dusk. The light was failing, turning the world into shades of blue and charcoal. I was doing my final sweep before securing the tower for the night. I swept the binoculars across the ridgeline about half a mile out. There was a clearing there, a patch of granite similar to my own spur. I saw a shape standing in the clearing. At first, I thought it was a hiker, a backpacker who had lost the trail. They weren't supposed to be out this far, not without a permit, but people get lost. I raised the radio to call out, to tell them to make camp and wait for morning, but I stopped. I lowered the radio. I lifted the binoculars again. The figure wasn't wearing clothes. It was pale, almost white against the darkening rock. It was standing perfectly still, no shivering. Even in summer, the temperature drops to near freezing at this elevation at night. A human would be shivering. This thing was not. It was facing the tower. I couldn't see its face from this distance, but I could see the posture. The arms hung too low. They reached past the knees. The spine was curved forward, not in a slump, but in a structural way, like a question mark. I watched it for a long time. My finger tightened on the focus wheel of the binoculars. I wanted to see a face. I needed to know if it was human. Then it moved. It didn't walk. It flowed. One moment it was there. The next it was behind the cover of a tree, moving with a speed that shouldn't be possible for something with such long limbs. It didn't snap branches. It didn't crush the underbrush. It moved like smoke. I lowered the binoculars. My hands were shaking. I looked at the radio. I looked at the rifle I kept in the corner. A old 30-30, meant for bare defense. I didn't touch the rifle. If I took it out, I was admitting that I was afraid. If I was afraid, it was real. So I left the rifle in the corner. I locked the trap door to the cab. I turned off the lights. I sat in the dark, listening. The night was long. The wind picked up, howling around the corners of the glass cab. I sat with my back against the wall, away from the windows. I didn't want to see anything else. I just wanted to hear the wind. But the wind carried other things. Whispers. I know what whispers sound like. I've heard them in crowds, in hallways. These were different. They were fragmented. Syllables without words. Sounds that mimicked the cadence of speech but lacked the meaning. Ah, shh. It sounded like someone trying to remember how to talk. It came from all around the tower, below, above, on the catwalk. I covered my ears. I hummed to myself. I recited the safety protocols in my head. Check fuel levels. Monitor weather patterns. Maintain radio contact. I kept reciting them until my voice cracked. Morning came with a relief that felt like pain. The sunlight hit the glass, bright and harsh. The shadows retreated. I felt foolish. I felt exhausted. I went out onto the catwalk to check the perimeter. There were more footprints, dozens of them. They were all over the grate. Some were small, like a child's. Some were large, wider than any human foot. They were all bare. They were all clean. They circled the tower 3 times. Then they stopped at the door. The handle of the trapdoor was scratched. Not forced, just scratched. Long, thin lines in the paint. I took a rag and wiped them away. I didn't log it. What would I write? Subject: unknown bipeds. Behavior: observational. They would think I had lost my mind. They would send a ranger up here to evaluate my psychological fitness. I couldn't leave. Not yet. I had to know. The days blurred together after that. I stopped scanning for fire. I scanned the tree line. I spent hours with the binoculars, searching the ridges, the valleys, the clearings. I saw them more often now, sometimes alone, sometimes in pairs. Once, I saw a group of 4 sitting on a rock face across the valley. They weren't doing anything. They were just sitting, watching the tower. They didn't hunt. They didn't gather food that I could see. They just existed. They were the feral humans. That's what I started calling them in my head. They looked like us, but they were wrong. The geometry was off. The skin was too pale, like mushrooms grown in the dark. The hair was matted, hanging in long ropes down their backs. But it was the eyes that haunted me. When the light hit them just right, I could see the glint. They didn't blink enough. I started to notice changes in my own behavior. I stopped cooking hot meals. The smell of food felt like a beacon. I ate cold beans from the can. I stopped using the radio, unless it was for the mandatory morning check-in. I kept my transmissions short. Point, silence. Weather clear. No smoke. Over. I didn't want them to hear my voice. I didn't want them to know I could talk. I had a theory, a dark little thought that grew in the back of my mind. I thought they were learning. I thought they were watching me to see how a human acts, how a human opens a door, how a human uses a tool, how a human speaks. They were mimicking us. But they were getting it wrong. They were like children playing with a suit that doesn't fit. One afternoon, the power went out. It wasn't a storm. The sky was clear. The radio just died. The lights flickered and went dark. The repeater system stopped humming. I was alone in the silence. True silence. No static, no hum, just the wind. I checked the batteries. They were dead. All of them. Even the spares I kept in the sealed container. They were corroded, as if exposed to acid. I felt a surge of panic. The radio was my lifeline. It was the only thing connecting me to the world of roads and towns and people. Without it, I was just a man in a box on a rock. I went down to the lower cabin to check the main fuse box. The door was ajar. I always locked it. I remembered locking it. I pushed the door open. The room was tossed. My spare supplies were on the floor. The water filters were smashed. But nothing was taken. Nothing was eaten. It was just disturbed. Like someone had been looking for something and couldn't find it. I stood in the doorway for a long time. The smell was there again. The rotting meat smell. It was stronger inside the cabin. It was coming from the corner. I walked over, my boots crunching on the broken glass of the water filters. In the corner, there was a pile of things. My spare socks, a hairbrush, a photograph of my sister, a logbook from last season. They had taken these things from inside my locked boxes. They had brought them here. They were collecting tokens. I picked up the photograph. It was wet, damp with saliva. I dropped it. I felt sick. I went back up to the cab. 45. I went back up to the cab. I barricaded the trapdoor with the heavy table. I sat behind it with the rifle across my lap. I waited for night. Night fell like a hammer. The darkness out here is absolute. There is no light pollution. When the moon is down, you cannot see your hand in front of your face. I sat in the dark, listening to the tower. The scratching started again, but this time, it wasn't on the door. It was on the glass. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Slow and deliberate. I didn't turn on the flashlight. I didn't want to show them where I was. I kept my eyes on the north window. The scraping moved to the west window, then the south. They were circling the cab. They were on the catwalk. I could hear the metal grate creaking under weight. Not one set of feet, many, a chorus of creaks. They were surrounding me. I held the rifle tight. The wood stock was cold against my cheek. I wondered if I could shoot them. Would it stop them? Or would it just make them angry? I didn't know what they were. Were they people who had gone mad? Were they something else entirely? Something that wore human skin? I remembered the stories the old-timers told at the ranger station. Stories about things in the deep woods that steal your voice. Stories about hikers who walk into the trees and come out wrong. I never believed them. I thought they were just campfire stories to scare the rookies. Now, sitting in the dark with a scratching on the glass, I believed everything. The scratching stopped. The silence returned. But it was different now. It was expectant. I waited for an hour, then 2. My legs went numb. My grip on the rifle cramped. I thought they had left. I thought maybe they were done playing. I stood up slowly. I crept toward the north window. I needed to see. I needed to know if the coast was clear. I leaned forward, just an inch, keeping my body hidden by the wall. I looked down at the catwalk. There was a face pressed against the glass. It was inches from mine. It was pale. The skin was stretched tight over the bone. The eyes were wide, unblinking, black pools that reflected nothing. The mouth was open, but there was no tongue. Just a dark hole. It wasn't breathing. It was just staring. It knew I was there. It had known the whole time. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I was locked in a stare down with something that shouldn't exist. It tilted its head, a slow, jerky motion, like a bird. Then it smiled. The skin tore at the corners of the mouth. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was a smile of recognition. It knew me. It knew what I was. I stumbled back. I dropped the rifle. The noise was loud in the small space. The face didn't flinch. It just kept smiling. Then it raised a hand. It tapped on the glass. Tap. I don't. When the face of glass of the noise was loud in the small space. Tap. Tap. 3 times. Then it dropped down. I heard the sound of it hitting the catwalk. No crunch of bone. No gasp of pain. Just a soft thud. Then silence. I stood there for the rest of the night. I didn't sit. I didn't sleep. I stood with my back to the center of the room, watching all 4 windows. I waited for the glass to break. I waited for them to come in. But they didn't. They just stayed out there. I could feel them, a ring of presence around the tower, waiting. By morning was the hardest. I had to go down. I had to leave. I couldn't stay here. I packed a bag, just the essentials. Water, jerky, the rifle, the radio. I left everything else. The logbooks, the clothes, the food supplies. I left it all for them. I moved the table from the trapdoor. My hands were shaking so bad, I could barely lift the latch. I opened the door. The logbooks. I opened the door. I opened the door. The catwalk was empty. The footprints were gone. The scratches were gone. It was as if nothing had happened, but the smell remained. It was thick in the air. I climbed down the ladder, and quote, every rung felt like a trap. I expected a hand to reach out from the shadows and grab my ankle. I expected to feel breath on my neck, but I reached the ground. I started hiking. I didn't look back. I walked fast. I didn't care about the noise I made. I crashed through the brush. I broke branches. I wanted them to know I was leaving. I wanted them to know I was yielding the territory. The trail was overgrown. I lost it twice. I had to navigate by the sun. My legs burned. My lungs tasted like copper. I hiked for 6 hours without stopping. When I finally reached the truck, I didn't unlock the door immediately. I stood there with my hand on the handle. I listened to the forest. The birds were singing. The wind was blowing. It sounded normal, but I knew better. I knew what was in the trees. I knew what was watching me from the shadows of the firs. I got in the truck. I locked the doors. I drove away. I didn't stop until I was on the highway. I didn't report it. I called in sick. I told them I had a family emergency. I told them I couldn't come back. They asked about the equipment. I told them I left it secure. I lied. I didn't want anyone else going up there. I didn't want another ranger to spend a night in that tower. I didn't want another person to see the face in the glass. It's been 3 months since I left. I live in town now. I have a job in a warehouse. It's loud. There are forklifts. There are people shouting. There is music playing over the speakers. I like the noise. I need the noise. But sometimes, when the shift ends and I walk to my car in the parking lot, I stop. I listen. The wind blows through the streetlights. It sounds like the trees. I see a shadow move between the cars. It looks like a person, but the arms hang too low. The spine is curved. I get in my car. I lock the doors. I drive home. I check the locks on my apartment. I check the windows. I sleep with the lights on. I thought I escaped. I thought putting miles between me and the mountain would save me. But I know now that it doesn't work that way. You don't escape the forest. You just leave its immediate vicinity. They are patient. They have all the time in the world. They know where I live. They know what I look like. I saw the recognition in that thing's eyes. It wasn't just seeing me. It was knowing me. Maybe they marked me. Maybe I belong to them now. Maybe the tower was just the interview. I still watch the tree line. When I go hiking on the weekends, stick to the paved trails. I don't go off path. I don't venture into the deep woods anymore. I can't. I know what's there. I know that we are not the only things walking upright in these woods. We are just the ones who forgot how to be silent. We are the loud ones, the clumsy ones, the ones who burn fuel and build towers and shout into radios. They are the quiet ones, the ones who wait, the feral humans. They are still out there, and I think they are getting closer. Last night, I woke up at 3 a.m. The air conditioning was humming. The city traffic was a distant rumble. I was safe. I was in a locked apartment on the 4th floor, but I smelled it. The smell of rotting meat, old flowers. It was faint, just a wisp. I got out of bed. I walked to the window. I looked down at the street. There was a street light flickering below. Underneath the light, standing on the sidewalk, was a figure, pale, naked, still. It was looking up, right at my window. I stepped back. I pulled the curtain closed. I didn't look again. I went back to bed. I lay there until sunrise. I didn't sleep. I'm recording this because I need to say it. I need to put it into words. Maybe if I write it down, it becomes real. Maybe if I warn someone, they won't make the same mistake. Don't go to the deep woods alone. Don't think you are the apex predator. You are not. You are a visitor. And there are things in the shadows that own the place. They watch us. They learn from us. And sometimes they come looking for us. If you hear breathing in the static, if you see footprints that don't match, if you feel the weight of the silence pressing against your ears, leave. Don't pack up. Don't log it. Don't. Just leave. Go back to the noise. Go back to the people. Because the silence is where they live. I still have the rifle. It's under my bed. I check it every week. I clean it. I oil it. But I know it won't help. Bullets are for things that bleed. I'm not sure they bleed. I'm not sure they can die. They are part of the mountain. They are part of the rock and the pine and the dark. You can't shoot the mountain. You can't kill the dark. You can only hide from it. And eventually, the hiding stops working. Eventually, the silence finds you. Even here, even in the city, the forest is everywhere. It's in the parks, it's in the green belts, it's in the shadows between the buildings. They are adapting. They are learning. I saw the way that thing tapped on the glass. It was trying to communicate. Next time, it might not tap. Next time, it might speak. And I'm not sure I want to hear what it has to say. So I keep the radio on. I keep the TV on. I keep the lights on. I drown out the quiet. Because in the quiet, I can hear them breathing. I can hear them walking. I can hear them waiting for me to make a mistake. We think we conquered this land. We built roads, we built cities, we mapped the terrain. But the map is wrong. There are blank spaces. There are places where the rules don't apply. Point silence is one of them. And I left a piece of myself up there. I left my peace. I left my trust. I left my belief that I am safe. Now I am just waiting for the power to go out, waiting for the smell of rot to fill the room, waiting for the tap on the glass. If you find this log, if you ever take a job as a lookout, remember me. Remember the footprints. Remember the face. And if you see something in the trees that looks like a man but moves like smoke, don't wave, don't call out, don't try to help, just turn around, walk away, and don't look back, because they are watching. They are always watching, and they are hungry for more than just food. They are hungry for us. The wind is picking up outside my apartment. It's rattling the window pane. Tap, tap, tap. I have to go. I have to check the lock. I have to check the lock again. I know I locked it. I know I did. But I have to check, because the silence is here now. It's in the room. It's behind me. I can feel it. Cold, heavy, waiting. I'm done. I'm done writing. I'm going to pick up the rifle. I'm going to sit in the corner. I'm going to watch the door. Good luck. Stay in the light. Stay in the noise. And pray you never hear the silence break. The end of the shift is coming. The sun is going down. The shadows are getting long. I can see them moving in the corner of my eye. Just shapes. Just tricks of the light. That's what I tell myself. Tricks of the light. But the smell is stronger now. It's coming from the closet. I didn't open the closet. I haven't opened it all day. But the door is ajar. Just an inch. Dark inside. I can hear breathing. Wet. Heavy. Synced with my own. I stand up. I grip the stock. My knuckles are white. I walk toward the closet. I have to know. I have to know if I'm alone. I reach out. My hand touches the knob. It's cold. Ice cold. I turn it. The latch clicks. The door swings open. It's empty. Just coats. Just shoes. Just the dark. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I laugh. A short, dry sound. I'm losing it. I'm finally losing it. I close the door. I turn around. And there, Standing in the middle of the room is the figure, pale, naked, smiling. It wasn't in the closet. It was here. It was behind me. It moved without sound. It moved without air. It is here. It is here. It is. We are ready.